Hello, welcome to the Graphic Medicine Podcast Monthly Wrap-Up. We are a podcast dedicated to discussing comics and how they interact with issues of health, illness, disability, and caregiving. I'm your co-host, Alex Thomas.
And I am your co-host, MK Serwick. So what's good, Alex?
Well, let's see. Since last time, we both had birthdays.
Yes, we
Our
did.
birthdays are a day apart, so that's always fun.
It is fun. Birthday twins.
Yeah, it's good. I got a Swatch watch from my wife.
Oh, wow.
I know. I was like, do they still sell these? And there's
How
a revival.
retro.
So it's
nice.
great. I love it. It doesn't do anything. It really doesn't do anything, but it's great.
It keeps time, though, right?
Yeah, I figured it tells time. My phone will ring if it rings. I don't need it to ring on my watch. It's fine.
True. It's true.
Yeah, so it's been good. My band is playing tonight, so I'm excited for that. The only problem is that my son and I were wrestling last night, and in the process of wrestling, I hyperextended my thumb.
Oh, no.
And I'm a little worried about playing drums all night, so we'll see. I've been icing it all day.
Oh, no, yeah.
Because it feels okay now, but it's a very repetitive thing I'll be doing. So hopefully, but I told my band, because typically when we play live, out of just pure anxiety, I tend to play faster, like inappropriately faster. So I'm like, my thumb injury will keep us on tempo because I'll be limited my pain. Yeah, that's been good. So we'll see how that goes. I think we haven't played in a while, so it'll be good. We have a bunch of new covers we're doing, so we're excited to give them a try.
I so want to get to one of those shows these days. I swear to God, I will one day.
We'll never stop, so don't worry about it.
Good.
How have you been?
Good. It's funny you mention your thumb because one of the things I've been struggling with guitar is like a tendonitis on the inside of my thumb right here, which I've diagnosed through Dr. Google, of course. And so, yeah, I just have to wear a brace at night. And I'm like, I use it as an excuse not to practice. And so my guitar gently weeps right now. I'm teaching and I'm working really, just a lot of hours. And then I'm like, oh, it hurts. I can't practice. So I've got to get, I'm not taking a class because I'm teaching right now. So I'm on a break, but that's no excuse to lose all my skills and show up at Guitar 2 and like still be like, where's a chord?
Right.
So I got to work on that. But other than that, things are good. So I'm teaching, and the class I'm teaching right now is medical illustration students, or biomedical visualization, as they call it at UIC. And the thing I'm really excited about is that I was in a meeting with Shelley Wall right before we started the class. I don't think I've talked about this in the podcast before. And Shelley's like, well, we're both teaching like roughly the same number of students at the same time in graphic medicine. Let's have our students collaborate in some way. And so
that's awesome.
I can't remember which one of our ideas it was, but we and also I was using the Making Nonfiction Comics book, and they have that whole chapter on interviewing, which I really wanted my students to read because I think it's a good skill to bring expertise into their comics. So you want to be able to do interviews, and like I really love that chapter and how they attend to all the ethics and stuff. Anyway, so I can't remember which one of us came up with the idea, but we said, what if they interviewed one another about their research projects for their masters, like interview the student scientist. And there were all these layers of why that was a cool idea. Like when they go to their, annual conference, they'll know another new medical illustrator from another institution. And so we did. So, and then we figured out to have them do a separate like two separate meetings. Like in one meeting, my student will interview yours. So that's the focus. And then separately, your student will interview mine. And so my students did the first interviews. They talked last week about how valuable having read that chapter from Making Nonfiction Comics was.
That's great.
And how, and it prepared them for, and for those of you who haven't listened, go back and listen to our interview with one of the creators. It's an amazing book. It's like, again, like we said, the textbook we've been waiting for, but even just that chapter on interviews, they felt it prepared them for things that might come up, made them think about some ethical issues they would attend to, difficult conversations, how to kind of bring the interview into the process. So then the goal of the project or the assignment was to then make a one-page comic about the interview. I gave them, I always give frustratingly loose guidelines and refuse to clarify because I want them to do what's appropriate to theirs. So they presented those comics last night, and oh my God, they were so good. So of course, awesome. Medical illustrators make great comics, but like, oh my God, I felt like they integrated so many things and they said when they presented their comic, I thought about how I represented the data because of that chapter on data presentation. And like, not that they got all of that from the book, they have courses in narrative and data and all that in their program, but like they just like knocked it out of the park. So I'm super excited
Yeah.
about that. So yeah, that's
That's a
my
great idea with you guys overlapping. So then, and then have you seen, so did you see Shelley's students on
No,
this as
they.
well?
I
Or
think that's what I have to. I have to circle back to Shelley and tell her how
yeah,
awesome this idea was, and then I think those interviews are like in a week, and then
yeah.
their goal is that we're going to get the classes together,
Hmm.
and then I don't know what that's going to look like, but kind of maybe reflect on the assignment because it was a pilot, like trying to do it.
Yeah.
But so far, my students were super enthusiastic about it, and like what's really fun is that they often in the comic would reflect on the fact that yeah, they talked about research and why that was important, but then they also nerded out about, for example, a Korean reality show that they both turns out they both love, right? And then they incorporate iconography from that show into the comic, right?
Yes.
Like so cool. Anyway,
I
it
mean
was
that's a great idea because it's great practice, but it's also like relatively low stakes because you know the person you're interviewing is like friendly and is going to be
right,
very
right,
collaborative. So you know, because I mean that's part of the challenge when you're trying to translate, you know, scientific information or something. You know, so I think it's a really good skill that's hard to practice. You know, so
right.
that's awesome.
Right. And one of the students, so, and then a couple of the students brought in, so we do this little Linda Berry thing at the beginning of class of like, we start with like, create your avatar. And then every week, as their sort of like warm up exercise, they have to do something different with that avatar, right? So this time is your avatar as a monster, your avatar as a toddler, you know, like just these little silly things. And some of them, as if they represented themselves in the comic, they did it as that avatar,
Oh,
which
that's great.
it was really fun because one of the students, their avatar is a praying mantis. And
Uh-huh.
so it was like this praying mantis interviewing this very realistic looking human, but then they could use just the head, which is like, you know, this oval with the two bulging eyes.
Yeah.
Even when we saw this character from behind, standing next to the interview subject, looking at data on the wall, we knew like it turned out to be like in the way that Disney designed characters, a
Hmm.
brilliant character design because you instantly knew of two humans you're looking at in shadow and silhouette from behind. You knew that was
Yeah.
the, you know, it was just really neat stuff like
That's
that.
great.
Those little
That's
things,
great.
and then we just sat there when each person presented and just nerded out about like all the details and stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that was really
Well,
really
hopefully you
cool.
guys can keep doing that if the classes line up similarly in the future.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, we just got lucky too, because what if I had like 15 and Shelly had
Right.
25 or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Wow. Great.
yeah, yeah.
So today we have a chat with Bree Martino and Lisa Dietrich, and they're the editors of this new book. Where is it? Here it is. Keywords and Key Images in Graphic Medicine. But first, the news.
Ah, yes, the news. Yeah, I usually cover the news kind of coming out of the website and tend to cover the same topic. So we'll go back to the awards and an update on where the awards are now. So shortlisting is underway. So the time to submit things for this year is closed, and we received 69 submissions in three categories: long form, short form, and educational. And it's interesting because like the number I think was maybe a little lower, but the page number's higher than expected, which is
Wow.
really interesting. And so each of our shortlisters, so the people who are reading, not all of it, but the people who are reading about 4,200 to 4,400 pages each by May.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
so one of my friends who, unrelated to my involvement, is one of the shortlisters. Like, did the math, and it's like, well, I have to read like I don't know, it's a couple hundred pages a day. So we just want to say how much we are so grateful for the hard work of the shortlisters. And most people say like, I just love being able to see all of this and have access to all this. But yeah, so that's that. It's a very exciting time, and we will announce that shortlist on May 1. And then for the reviews, more reviews are being posted every week. But I just want to highlight one by our reviews editor, Kevin Wolf. And he does these groupings called medical mentions. And he defines a medical mention as a group of works whose primary topic is not medical generally, like the whole book is not a medical topic, but at some point they go in depth on a medical topic in the book. And so he groups them together and he themes them. And so he has this grouping called anti-stereotypes. And the topics of the books, these 6 books in this grouping, range from computers to custodial work to hair cutters to judo. So like it's just like in each of those in some way is an anti-stereotype, which is such an interesting way to kind of think about how graphic medicine
Yes.
micro pops up within other texts. And this is medical mentions number 18 that he's done. So that just sort of speaks to how hard he works and how much he reads, which is really amazing. So yeah, so that's about it from the website. Our newsletter is rocking. I'm really proud of it. It's a new format, and how much people are kind of setting aside in an Instagram group or whatever, getting things to me to be able to feature. So if you haven't signed up for that, please make sure you do, because it's kind of a great way to keep on top of what's happening in graphic medicine.
The that medical mention thing is a great idea because there's so much work that is not necessarily like overtly a full,
Right.
work of graphic medicine, but it,
Right.
like you said, it seeps its way into lots of different types of comics. So it's a great way of being able to still feature it without it kind of being confusing.
Right. Right. Right.
That's great. I love that idea. All right. So I have some news from the GMIC board to share. The first one is that we are actively recruiting for a few new board members. So hopefully this will be out. It's on me to do this in time before the deadline hits. So that's my motivation to get this out as soon as possible. But anyway, the GMIC, the Graphic Medicine International Collective, is looking to add two new members to its board. And this will be a great opportunity for anyone who's interested in getting involved in the graphic medicine community. So, as you may or may not know, GMIC oversees and coordinates a lot of different projects and initiatives, including the graphic medicine website, our Frontline Comics project, the podcast, a lot of other things like that you see kind of featured on the website. It's a working board, and board members meet monthly and are expected to be actively involved in both planning and execution of initiatives. It's an unpaid position. GMIC is a volunteer organization without a significant funding stream. And the terms are for 3 years with the possibility of going on for a second 3-year term. And so we're looking for a diverse group of applicants: scholars, artists, healthcare providers, students, others. So if you're interested, check out the website. I'll have a link here. And we're just asking for an expression of interest in a passage of no more than 1,000 words. So if you're interested, let us know, and we'll add you to the list of great candidates we've gotten so far. The second thing I've been talking about, for a while now, is our conference is coming up. It also just dawned on us that this is the 15th anniversary of the Comics in Medicine or Graphic Medicine Conference. So that's really exciting. I don't know, it kind of snuck up on us. So it's going to be in Baltimore, July 23rd through 25th. So if you haven't already, make some travel plans, and we hope to see you there. The theme, once again, is drawing perspectives, health, and graphic narratives under pressure. And by now, the submissions should have been reviewed, and you should have heard back. So hopefully, we have a good list of workshops and panels all organized by the time you're seeing this video. So we're hoping to see you in Baltimore in July.
All right, so we are very excited to welcome the editors of Keywords and Key Images in Graphic Medicine. And I'm going to introduce Lisa Diedrich. Lisa is a professor of women's, gender, and sexuality studies at Stony Brook University, and her research and teaching interests are in critical illness and disability studies, feminist science studies, critical pedagogies, and graphic medicine. And Lisa is the author of several books, including Illness, Politics, and Hashtag Activism, Indirect Action, Schizophrenia, Epilepsy, AIDS, and the Course of Health Activism, Treatments, Language, Politics, and Culture of Illness, just to name a few. And more recently, she and our other esteemed guest today, as I mentioned, co-edited Keywords, Key Images in Graphic Medicine, which we will be discussing on today's episode.
Yes, and we're also joined by Dr. Bree Martino. They are an associate professor and chair of communications and affiliated faculty in race, gender, and sexuality studies at Simmons University. They earned their doctoral degree in queer and feminist cultural studies from Stony Brook University. Dr. Martino's research and teaching interests bridge graphic medicine, disability justice, queer, transvisual culture, and critical feminist pedagogies. Their work has been published in peer-reviewed journals such as MAI, Journal of Feminism and Visual Culture, the Journal of Literary and Cultural Disability Studies, and the Graphic Medicine Review.
So, first and foremost, congratulations on the book. It must be really exciting to have this out in the world. It's beautiful. And welcome to the Graphic Medicine Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes, it's
you.
really exciting. As I think you know, MK, it took a while. So yeah, we're really excited, and we do actually think it turned out really beautifully. So we're grateful for how it turned out.
Great.
Mhm.
So first off, yeah, how did this all start? How did you both
Mm.
start creating this book?
Well, I'll start, Bree, and then you can jump in
Yeah.
too. I mean, it's been a long process. I mean, I think we think that 2019 was when we really began to sort of work on it, first began to work on it, and then it sort of got interrupted by and sort of had the idea for it, and then some of that process, that early process was interrupted by the pandemic. So I think the call for papers went out in 2021, and
Mm.
we've been working on it ever since then, pretty diligently. And it's a huge project because it has many different parts and we've got lots of contributors. And so it did take some time, but yeah, we are very happy by how it turned out. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Bree.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting in that restaurant in that beautiful hotel in 2019 in Brighton for the graphic medicine conference, and talking about it, and that's just kind of back and forthing different terms and how cool would this be as a key image, and then yeah, it sort of did go through a variety of it got slowed down a little bit, I think, because of COVID, right? And it took many forms over the 6 years, I guess, that we were working on it.
So, just to start, so the title is Keywords, Key Images in Graphic Medicine. So, just some background about me. I'm a clinician and a cartoonist, but definitely not a scholar or academic at all. So I think I'm a little bit not well versed in some of the foundational work that this book is kind of based around. And I know you explained it pretty well in the introduction, but just for the viewers as well, first off, could you explain what the concept of the keywords approach is?
Sure, yeah. So the keywords approach was popularized by a cultural studies scholar by the name of Raymond Williams, and he was using it to basically think about how words form a certain structure for the way that we live in society. And in the original keywords book, it's really cool. There's like an etymologies of how different words sort of came to be what they are, came to mean what they are. And it's a model that has been, or a method, I should say, that's been used since in a lot of different areas. So I believe it was the very first TSQ, Transgender Studies Quarterly, was a keywords volume. Lisa and I think, were both really impressed by looking at the Indigenous Studies keywords volume. It has been sort of widely used. One of the things that we, were thinking about and what we wanted to add with this book is that we felt that keywords alone didn't quite capture the work that comics does in working with words and images together, right? That words and images can do something together that is both greater than and different from the sum of their parts, right? So we introduced, I guess, two neologisms, both key images as well as keywords slash key images, to think about how this process might be helpful for understanding comics and specifically graphic medicine.
And to clarify that, so the way that I sort of have been thinking about it is that, and maybe I'm completely misunderstanding that, is this is in this arena, these are words and images that just kind of recur and can be thought about together as a way to understand that larger area. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we tried to do though was really make it collaborative with our contributors. So we did, when we first sent out the CFP, we did have a list of possible keywords that we were thinking about that kind of made sense in relation to graphic medicine. And we were really seeing it as a kind of sort of an opportunity to kind of see where the field and the movement is in the present moment. So we saw it as a sort of opportunity, but we didn't want to fix it either. And so we did have some ideas, and some people did contribute some of the words that we had initially thought of. Things like cancer was a word, and so some of the words were things like diagnosis, and but other things that people ended up kind of contributing were words that are sort of like more comics oriented terms, and allowed them to sort of explain how they make and do comics. And so that sort of proved to be really cool. And those are more general, like Brian Fee's contributed several keywords slash key images, metaphor, space, time, and subtext. And he talked about mom's cancer, his graphic narrative of his mother's cancer, and he used the examples from that text to talk about those ideas, those concepts, those visual tropes that he uses in his comic. And that seemed amazing to us, but that came about through talking to him about, I mean, so initially we thought, oh, well, Brian Fee's mom's cancer, he would do the key word slash key image for cancer. But in fact, in this kind of back and forth with him, we decided that actually this is what he's doing. These terms worked better. And so we saw there that it was really exciting to kind of work with people to kind of figure out what their key word slash key image was. And so some of them are actually quite subjective in terms of an image that someone themselves sort of came upon. I mean, Ian's image, Ian Williams's image, which is the cover image of OCD, is kind of an example of that, an image that encapsulates the idea of OCD for Ian Williams, but that most of us can sort of see and understand and appreciate how that encapsulates OCD.
So it's almost like a key word, for example, is like a recurring concept maybe that is interesting to analyze across different ways it's kind of expressed in literature or studies. And I think and a key image is basically like applying that to comics where maybe it's not in letters, but it's actually in a drawn image, right? Is that the idea?
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
What you
I'm getting
did,
it. I'm getting
that is good. Yeah, yeah. And that's why it's sometimes slightly personal, subjective,
Yes.
because it's a particular, I mean, OCD became a kind of important word in the book, an image in the book, because a lot of people had different ideas that were sort of OCD, obsessive compulsive related. And that kind of made a lot of sense to us ultimately as encapsulating something about graphic medicine.
So then how do you yeah, differentiate like a key image from a keyword slash key image or that kind of yeah, that neologism that you described?
I'll let you take that, Bree.
Yeah, sure. So that has to do, I think, really with the sort of like Gestalt concept that's behind both of them, right? That the key word slash key image expresses what the word and image are doing together, right?
Hmm.
So that they're doing something that isn't just additive, but that's actually changing via not quite juxtaposition, but via their relation, right? What that meaning may be. Whereas key image versus keyword is kind of more strictly living in those visual versus textual registers.
That makes sense. You know, I was going to pull up an example if I can find it. I'll cut to it. But there's one at the end of where it's I think it's like a specimen cup. Oh, this one, yeah. So this to me is a good example, right? Like where it's you see that? I'll cut to it.
I love this.
But it's basically like, yeah, it's like the it's an image I think with a sperm sample from a sperm donation. Then it just says dad under it, where I get your meaning, where it's like neither of those function independently of each other, but together they are a concept. Okay,
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
I get it.
exactly.
I get it now.
Bree, do you want to talk about that Ellen's image? Because
Oh my gosh, I'm just so happy that we have this chapter in the book. The author Ellen Grabiner is a mentor of mine. She's someone I've known for oh my gosh, almost 30 years at this point. She's writing about lesbian motherhood in the 80s. Her son actually shares my birthday. So we have that, yeah. And I'm just so happy. I've known about this story forever, and I've sort of like, I met Alex when he was 16. I've sort of like gone through the various how it's evolved, the story in real time, and to see it come kind of like all together is brilliant. This is I love that Ellen shared this chapter with us.
Nice, nice, nice. That's wonderful. So the book is organized, maybe for any of our viewers or listeners who hasn't quite kind of gotten their hands on it yet. It's organized into 5 distinct sections, which I'm really intrigued by these sections. Is practice, pedagogy, process, and personal. I'm missing one. Practice, pedagogy, process, personal, autobiographical. Am I missing?
And
Political.
Political. Thank you. Ha, one to leave out. Yeah. So, and I like the way you sort of describe each of those, right? Like practice is ways of reading, pedagogy, ways of teaching and learning. So, what I'm thinking a lot about, because I'm always talking about like the 4 kinds of comics there are, right? Like education, research, reflection, and advocacy. And right now I'm really realizing like they aren't distinct categories, right?
No.
There's so much, those Venn diagrams weave and move. And so how did you come to that structure, and I'm most interested in how did you kind of deal with that overlap or tease them apart?
Yeah. I'll start, Bree, but you can jump in.
Yeah,
I
sure.
mean, well, first of all, we did initially organize it alphabetically in keeping with Raymond Williams's keywords approach. So we initially had them alphabetically. He kind of does that to suggest a kind of almost a non hierarchical approach to this method. And we were inspired by that. But in talking to the editors of the graphic medicine series at Penn State University Press, they felt that it might work better to organize it thematically, and they sort of pushed us to think about that. And when we did kind of think about how this would be used, how the book would be picked up and used, in the classroom and in other spaces, we did feel like, yeah, it might be helpful to break it down a little bit into these sections. And so yeah, practice ways of reading, pedagogy ways of teaching and learning, process ways of making, personal autobiographical ways of documenting, and politics, ending with politics intentionally, ways of doing. Um, and then we had to kind of divide, put the different um, contributions in those categories. And some of them don't, they do fit those categories, but they could fit in every category. As you're saying, MK, they really cross the categories. So those are sort of artificial boundaries, but that we thought would be helpful in terms of people using the book and teaching the book and reading the book. But we also, and again, we drew on Raymond Williams, we kind of created ways of kind of linking. So he in his book, he says, see, at the end of each entry, see, and links to these other entries. So we incorporated that kind of thing so that we could link across the different sections and themes, to sort of show that this is this is a structure that we've created, and it kind of is helpful, but it also maybe misses out on some of the things that are happening across these categories.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with MK in that I also, a lot of what I do is health education materials for different types of audiences. So I tend to think of it in a more kind of rigid way, which is like, who's your audience? Is it another physician? Is it a medical student? Is it a patient? Is it public health? But then when you think about kind of the categories, especially because it's being written by people who are in those respective worlds, and it's very clear that they overlap, and there isn't those clear divisions. I thought that, yeah, just the way that it was organized was actually intriguing, and it made me think about my preconceptions about that kind of division. Like, for example, the therapeutic performance section in the pedagogy section, that was it was a great thought. I never even considered it a form of pedagogy, but it is, and that is a way that you know, as a provider. I mean, that chapter is great, but it just made me, especially in context of the section, what is it was in, it was really interesting because, you know, for example, like if I'm drawing a diagram for a patient to teach them something, I'm clearly performing also. and
Absolutely.
and I'm clearly masking my own, you know, feelings that I may be going through that day. And those are all things that are happening at the same time. And we like to think of them as separate, but they're not. And so I think contextualizing in this way, especially where it's a lot of these firsthand accounts, is a great way of just letting those barriers kind of melt. So I really like that about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, one other sort of thing was that we didn't want to sort of just have all the clinician. I mean, first of all, we have people who are doing all of these things. I mean, MK is an example. I mean, you're an example too, Alex, where you're a health practitioner and also a comics artist. And some people are also doing academic work. I think MK, you would sort of cover all those wear all those hats, right? So we didn't want to divide up because it seems to me this is what is so special about graphic medicine is that those different people come together and have to kind of work together and figure things out together. And so, yeah, we didn't want to separate them out and have a separate section where all the doctors are doing something and then the comics artists are doing something. Yeah.
And similarly, like as you said with Brian with mom's cancer, where you know assumed that, oh, he would have the cancer section, but then he actually had so much to say about the communication and the form. And I guess were there other examples of that where you had kind of a list of things where things kind of ended up differently than you anticipated, or ways that you were kind of surprised by that?
Absolutely, right? I mean, I think that Brian had submitted one chapter, one piece to begin with, and you know, I think one of the unique things about this book is there was quite a bit of back and forth between us and the different contributors. You know, we had to really think also about what sort of elements was Brian working with, right? And we collaborated with that on him and thinking about, okay, well, this is kind of really an important point about subtext. This is an important point about metaphor. With Ellen's chapter, it was originally, I believe, called something like Doctor Donor or Doctoring, right? And after sort of really working through what the chapter was doing and what she was doing with the key image, it was about picturing, right? So she's really drawing off of the work of WJT Mitchell in terms of picturing. So a lot of that did shift. And as Lisa said at the beginning, there are also like some pretty big omissions when it comes to both comics and to graphic medicine, right? There's not a chapter on the gutter. There's not a chapter on the panel. So some of these sort of like devices that are used in comics are kind of missing, right? But then Maya Kobabe has a chapter on non-adjacent sequence, which captures some of that, right? But in a very different way.
Yeah, that chapter in particular, that's a concept that I love to use, you know, in health communication that I've never seen explained before. And so sometimes I'll draw it and try to explain what I'm doing to, you know, whoever I'm drawing the thing for, but it was great to actually see it formally kind of explained, especially with an example. I mean, I love pictures, and so seeing kind of like the written explanation as well as the thought process of the creator, but then actually seeing the finished product it's such a great resource. I know we talked about this in a previous episode, but this kind of reminds me of the Calvin and Hobbes 10th anniversary special, where in the beginning of the book he just goes through process and shows examples of his work, and it's such a great way of understanding how some of these creators think and work. And so I think we're talking about, like, you know, with Ian or Brian or, you know, a lot of these authors that may be well known in graphic medicine, it actually seeing like what their thought process was and how they use the tools that they, you know, use, or the, you know, the keywords that they dealt with their whole life. It's a really interesting way of kind of understanding their thinking behind it. And also like finding a way that how, you know, you may be able to apply that to the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and just picking up on that, it's really cool to have So I have a student now who said, I'd really like to read all of The Bad Doctor and discuss it. And to have the chapter where we have Ian talking about what his process was that maybe we might have heard on a panel, but to
Mhm.
have that kind of documented in kind of a focal lens is really nice to share in conjunction with the text, right, as a teacher. So that kind of raises this question that I frequently ask of people who make books in graphic medicine, which is, and maybe this is real obvious, but I want to hear if you have other ideas I haven't thought of. But like, what is the work you want this book to do in the world?
Hmm.
Do
So
you want to start,
I
Bree? Yeah.
want to, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to start on that one because I think I have an idea. I've been very sort of inspired, actually, MK, by your most recent LB and Mean. There's this, I think it's Casey's chapter drawing, right, where it's he's they're talking to Linda Berry, and it's the very last panel, right, and Casey has an idea, and let me just read it. And then Linda says, I think you have a book that's going to matter to a lot of people, and I'm going to help you make it. So to me, and I'm going to help you make it. I'm going to sort of collaborate with you. What you're saying, this idea is important, sort of wherever it's sort of coming from, and it's important to more people than you may think it is, right? So for me, I think sort of having folks see the graphic medicine work that they're doing or that they want to do as bridging more contexts than they might imagine, and also sort of seeing the text as a invitation to connect, right? As an invitation to do that thing, to create more of that thing.
Wow.
Nice.
That's very nice. Yeah, I love the idea of the invitation. I'll just add that we did kind of end, I mean, we did end with politics because we did feel that the idea of expanding a sort of reductive notion of graphic medicine was really key to our understanding of the project. And so, although, and again, that's sort of those particular chapters. I mean, there's other chapters that are doing political work, but we really wanted people to understand graphic medicine as out in the world, doing work out in the world, and thinking about the impact of that. So I think both of us were kind of motivated by that desire to expand the frame of graphic medicine a little bit.
Yeah, it reminds me a
Yeah.
little bit about how Will Eisner, way early on, and I forgot what year this quote is from. I think it's from that book, Sequential Image and whatever, Sequential Art. But Will Eisner says something like, "Until comics are, or not, it's not an ultimatum." Yeah, it's nice. It's in the introduction, but it's something
Right next
about
to it.
like basically like comics need to do work of more import if they really want to get out into the world. And I love that what you're gesturing to there and what you just said is like graphic medicine too, like get out into the world and do this work and yeah, draw attention to the work that it already is doing. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And I will say, like I said, as like a non-academic, person who's not really well versed in health humanities or anything, this was very understandable and very approachable. And I really, I encourage, us coming from that world to read this book because it's incredibly engaging and really thought-provoking. And yeah, so I'm
Well,
really
I
excited
just
for
want
the
to
wide
say
audience. Yeah.
thank you for that, Alex, because we are a little, we don't want it to be sort of totally pinholed as an academic book at all. And we were really, that's one of the reasons that the kind of styles of the chapters, the writing styles, for example, are varied. We
Yeah.
really were interested in that. And um, w- in the intro, we do compare our work to a couple of other keywords projects that are kind of linked either to health humanities or comic studies. And we sort of say that ours stands out, first of all, because it has images, which these other ones don't for some reason, but also because we're really thinking, it's not just all academics who've contributed. And so that matters because the approaches are very different. And we really liked that. And we also found, there's very creative writing styles that so we think that makes it more teachable that you can kind of yeah, if you're teaching the bad doctor, there's some chapters that there's Ian's chapter, but there's also the chapter on therapeutic performance that Anna Mukamal's chapter that reference Ian's work. But there's also just a variation in kinds of, you can see the creative writing styles, and I think that makes it also more accessible and people will be interested in that, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it kind of feels like being at a graphic medicine conference, because you have
Oh,
different sessions with different perspectives, and you'll be in a session and be like, whoa, I don't know any of this, but I'm fascinated, or you go to another one and say, oh, I know all these people on the panel, I know the work they're doing. It's great to kind of have that experience
we
where
could have
you're
paid you to
familiar and
say
unfamiliar.
that. We paid you to say that because that's exactly, yeah, that's one of the inspirations is the graphic medicine conference, which
Yeah.
looks like this a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mission accomplished. It really, I got it. Well, thanks again for spending some time with us. We look forward for everyone else picking up this book. It's great. Um, and yeah, so as our next segment, we like to talk to our guests about what they may be reading. I've expanded it to media they're consuming if you don't happen to be reading something you'd like to talk about. So who would like to go first?
I guess I can go first.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of what I'm reading, I am deep in curricular redesign as well as teaching. So I'm reading a lot of stuff that I'm teaching right now, right? So I have been reading again, I've already read this, but The Cartoonist Club, which is so fantastic for teaching undergraduates about comics. I've also just been reading, I'm about halfway through Rachel Thomas's Shrink.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, that, and then in terms of, and then of course, right, this book by MK.
I paid you to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything goes back to Linda Berry, right? So in terms of those, that's what I've been reading, I guess, academically. In terms of what I've been consuming otherwise, this is sort of embarrassing. I've been watching Yellow Jackets, and I probably should not be watching that at all because I need to stop watching it. It's way too dark for me. I stopped watching horror a long time ago, but that has been what has been in my world recently.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good. Well, I also am reading, well, first of all, I'm reading voraciously now. I feel like the present moment, I'm a reader, but it's the thing that is really helping me get through a lot of what we're dealing with. Partly, I mean, MK, you'll appreciate this. I mean, I work on a lot of stuff about AIDS, HIV AIDS, and so it's actually helped me to go back and, well, I'm always reading stuff about the early days of the AIDS epidemic, but to go back to that is interesting in this context because it gives it some perspective, and so it's helpful for me to do that. That's not happy, but it's helpful, I think. And it also reminds me of, that what's happening now, though seemingly unprecedented and awful, well, there was awful before too, and people responded in very multiple ways to try to make things better, and that's helpful for me. Um, as far as teaching, I've got my books here too that I'm teaching and that I also love. So in my graduate seminar, we're reading next week. And I just finished it today, rereading it. I've read it several times. Christina Sharp's Ordinary Notes, which is about um, uh, racism and anti-blackness. And it's a very kind of formally very interesting book. It's got, short selection of notes. Some are longer. There's lots of images. So it's a spectacularly beautiful book and organized in really interesting ways. And she also, so along with a critique of anti-blackness in US and other culture, she's also kind of trying to convey enact beauty, what she calls beauty as method. And so it's just a powerful book. So I love that. And I'm going to be teaching that next week. And then the other book I'm teaching next week, you all will know, is The Best We Could Do by T. Bui, about her and her family's migration from Vietnam to the US. Also timely, so timely, because it's about refugees and immigrants and racism and the difficulties of that experience. It's about transgenerational trauma as well. So it's a really powerful book, and I love teaching it. So yeah, that's it for now.
Ah, wonderful. Yeah. And if you gave us more time, we probably could think of 20 other things where, because there's something about the moment in culture that we're just consuming so much, right? It's like what you're reading, what you're watching, what you're playing, what you're, yeah, it's amazing. I'll go next. So yeah, of course I can't properly choose, but kind of picking up on a theme I mentioned in the interview was, so I've been opening my mind to the idea of like, there are not four categories or five of what graphic medicine is doing in the world, right? And the funny thing is, like, if I get a category of something from someone else, like Arthur Frank's, these are the four kinds of narratives of, and I'm like, no, this is not any of those. Like, I resist those, and yet, of course, the last 2 years I've been teaching this, right? So I'm working on this, like, this sort of kind of almost trying to create a visual for the ways in which these interact and what kind of titles fall into the ways that, like, it's doing several of the things of, like, education, research, reflection, memoir, advocacy. And one of the ones I think that really does a lot of all of the above, I'm revisiting Kid Gloves.
Oh, yeah.
Lucy Nisley's, because I just love this. First of all, this visual style is just so clear and beautiful, right? I mean, it's just so pleasant to engage with. But also, like, so it's like, here's the lived experience, which is sort of the memoir and reflection. Screech, here's more research on pregnancy. Okay, back to what was happened. Screech, here's research on, medical, like problem with women, right? Screech, here's the history of gynecology, right? And it just kind of goes through those things. And it may seem like this artificial, like, thing to separate them and sort of integrate, but I kind of love that it separates them, because it kind of, okay, here's where we're going to get, like, nerdy about, like, why that is the way it is. How did it get to be that that's the situation that she's in the hospital, or that's the situation with the baby, or whatever. I love that. And it's also, like, kind of focuses on different aspects of, like, things in the medical humanities and not just the medical, right? Like the history of this, or like whatever. And so, or the social impact and why it, like, actually impacts what happens in a hospital room. I just love that. So I've been revisiting that and thinking about how I can integrate that into my teaching. And yeah, I have a million reactions to things that both of you've said, but I'm going to hold off on that. So, Lisa talked about, like, the ways in which we're consuming to cope, I think. And for me, I have never been someone who reads mysteries, but I mentioned this in a previous issue. Last year, I read all of Louise Penny's Three Pines mysteries. 20 of them. And so now I've moved, and I love doing the thing, like, and I used to do this in college as an English major, where I'd like, okay, I like Oscar Wilde, I'm going to read everything Oscar Wilde wrote, right? Yeah. When you do George Shaw, like, you do this deep dive on so I'm currently doing deep dive on mystery people. And right now it's this mystery writer named Janice Hallett. I don't know if anyone's read anything. So they are epistolary mysteries, but like 20th century, like, kinds of things that would be epistolary, like text messages, emails, and they're all at the service of solving a murder mystery, right? But they're really unique in that, first of all, for most of it, you're like, okay, one of these people's going to die, but we don't know who it is yet, right? You don't know who that. But then also, like, there's these, how your mysteries, you're like, even if you figure out who did it, you're still enjoying the way it's written. There's constant surprises. So, like, I am, like, all in on these mysteries right now. And I think I just started the fifth one. And if you're interested in this writer and that sounds appealing to you, The Appeal, a book called The Appeal, is a great one to start with. Anyway, okay. So that's it. That's enough for me for now.
I'm noting that down.
Yeah, me too. And we'll have on the show notes, all of these books will be listed. Yeah.
Okay, great.
The one I want to talk about was The Crow. So I don't know how familiar you are with this, but I was, made aware of it when it came out as a movie when I was, like, in, junior high. And, The Crow, the movie, is about, this, like, supernatural superhero character that was he and his fiance were murdered by an evil gang of thugs, and he comes back to life and gets revenge on the people that murdered him and his wife, basically. Um, so the movie itself, though, was also like it was very different than other kinds of superhero movies at the time. It was like really dark, but also very like moving and kind of like it was like very goth, and it
Who
just
was in it? Who
it was
was
so Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, was
right?
the
Okay.
Crow, and the big part of that movie, the story of that movie, is he actually was murdered
Hmm.
accidentally in the filming of the movie. It
Mm,
was
okay.
crazy. So I mean, so the actual the story is about this superhero that that dies and comes back to life, and then the actor was actually killed by like a blank that had like a bullet casing that somehow still shot him or something, and so he died before the movie was finished completing. So then they used at the time, like, cutting edge in the mid 90s computer graphics just to like fill in the final few scenes so that they could complete the movie. And
Yeah.
because of that, this movie is like a cult classic and kind of legendary just for that. But then
Mhm.
like the movie itself also was like really just even without that was like a very kind of it was just different. It felt different than like a Batman or something like that.
Mhm.
So then when you learn more about the comic that it's based on and the author, James O'Barr, who created it, you realize that this is like one of, at least in my opinion, one of like the greatest works of like interpreting trauma that I've seen a cartoonist create. So
Wow.
so when you learn more about this author's story, it all makes sense in terms of how this comic was an expression of his traumatic experience in his life. So he lived a very hard life, grew up in orphanages, foster homes. In high school, he fell in love with a girl. They got engaged, very young. He didn't pay his car insurance and couldn't drive his car because he knew that the cops in town were, aware of this. So he one night he called his fiance at the time, can you pick me up? I don't want to drive my car. So then she walks out to her car, and on her way to the car, she is killed by a drunk driver, like as a pedestrian. And so then his life, goes off the rails, and he enters this like, decades long, self-destructive depression. He always drew as a child, like, living very, lonely life. And then he went into the army. And then while he was in the military, he just started drawing this comic just for himself, just as kind of an expression of going through the grief, because there's a lot of rage, there's a lot of just anger, and there's a lot of guilt. So there's so much guilt involved in his feelings and how he's expressing it. And he never even intended to print this as a comic. He was just doing it on his own. He was kind of a self-taught, artist, and he was discharged from the military. He was working, in a auto body shop. And then eventually he was like shopping in a comic store, and the owner of the comic store decided to start his own like printing house. And so then he showed him this comic, and they printed a couple, copies of it. Became wildly successful and popular in like the indie scene. Then he eventually teamed up with one of the creators of the Ninja Turtles at the time, who encouraged him to keep going with this. It eventually became, I think, the best-selling independent graphic novel of all time. So like a million copies sold. But it was something that he worked on for decades. And that's what's the crazy part. And so like this was the special edition. And in the special edition, he added scenes that he actually took out from before because he thought they were too personal. Because the way the story is written, it's like you don't actually know about the tragedy of this couple. It starts as this like supernatural character fighting people, and you don't really know what's going on. But then it keeps going back to this other, like light images of this happy couple, and then they both converge when you realize kind of what happens. And so I guess a lot of those like lighter images were directly from his life and stuff that like, words that he and his fiance shared with each other, that when he was drawing it at the time, he was like, this is personal. I don't want to print it. But then
Mhm.
like 30 years later, he's like, okay, I feel like we can print this now. And
Wow.
then beyond that, he became really good friends with Brandon Lee during the filming of the movie because he was very involved in the film production. So then when the actor dies making this movie, once again he enters this whole world of guilt and all the self-destructive behavior. Eventually Brandon Lee's fiance connects with him and tells him, it's not your fault. This was never your fault. And so then he has this cathartic moment that he writes about like at Brandon Lee's grave, where he finally like comes to terms with everything, finally kind of like gets sober, eventually gets married, has kids, but it was like this decades long odyssey into like, but it produced this like remarkable work of art that, but is, and it's also a really good example of how you can take your real experience and create something very powerful that's wildly fictionalized, but also like incredibly real. And so, going back to like, what we've been talking about with the times we're living in, it's like, for me, it almost feels like like I don't want to draw comics about what's going on now exactly because it just doesn't feel
Mhm.
appropriate, or I don't know what it is. There's something about it, but it's inspiring me to kind of enter like the world of fiction and how this can be informed by our real life experiences and how it can connect to more people and those kinds of things. So anyway, I highly recommend this book if anyone hasn't read it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. And it's so funny because his story probably could have been just a good
Yeah.
autobiography,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Well, you sold me on it. I have
Yeah.
a vague memory of the film stuff. I
Yeah.
don't think I saw the film, but I think I knew about the stuff around the film.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Really.
yeah.
And then they made a horrible remake recently that, no one
Okay.
should see. So yeah.
Wow. Wow.
All right. Well, that was a fun episode. Sorry to end on kind of a downer, but it's a great book. Well, thanks again for joining us. This was a really fun conversation. And once again, we'll have all the info of the everything we talked about, as well as keywords, key images in graphic medicine in our show notes. And congratulations on the book. And we're looking forward to the more discussions that this stimulate. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about it at the conference this summer.
Yeah. Yeah. See you in Baltimore.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys. This was such fun.
It's a lot of fun. Thanks so much.